nice and early. We're on time today, right? 2 people here. So yeah, we're just starting. We've just got live. Just going to give it a few more seconds and then, oh, 4 more people. Brilliant. Okay, so you're all getting the notifications. Lovely to see you all. Thanks for showing up today. It's going to be a fun one today. Okay, so let's start the show. Welcome to Food for Thought, episode 20. Today we're here to talk about efficiency, effectiveness, flow, festivals, and creating from your sweet spot. I'm here talking with Anthony Palacin. Anthony is a holistic peak performance and flow coach. He believes we should all live our best lives, as do I. And Anthony says we are all at different stages in our lives and we all have such unique experiences and life paths that we can benefit from more interesting conversations and learn from each other. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's what we're here to do today. He also says the world is full of solutions, not problems, and I couldn't agree more with that. So it's another reason I'm looking forward to today. And the world needs more conversations, more education, more knowledge, and more healing. And who knows, hopefully we can bring you all 4 of those things in this meeting. So absolute pleasure to have you here, Anthony. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself, tell people about you?
Pleasure to be here, Matt. Thank you so much for hosting, and thank you for the great introduction. As Matt said, I'm a holistic peak performance coach and flow state coach. Mainly, it's in the space of personal development, productivity, mindsets, and really just performing at your highest level in order to achieve your goals, be they business goals or other, being effective and efficient, making the most of your time and energy, because those things are very precious. You can connect with me on Facebook, Anthony Palacin, or on my website, which is written there. It's my last name, .co.uk.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. And that's awesome. And hello to everybody watching. Thank you all for tuning in. I will be in the comments in a little while, but thank you all for your comments. And so, yeah, I think we've got a list of questions, but the thing that springs to mind, so you said about peak performance and efficiency and achieving goals and all of these things. Now, these things aren't just for high achievers, are they?
Correct. I'm a big believer that we all have within us that wanting and that longing to express ourselves, to express our uniqueness. And perhaps if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pyramid of meeting your basic needs, your psychological, your safety needs, and then beyond that is where we talk about self-actualization, purpose, flow, creativity, those kinds of things. So absolutely, I think it's within everyone's potential to reach that highest self or, highest peak of your performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something I couldn't agree more. It's something I'm constantly working towards because it's it's a hard one to gauge where my highest level of performance is. So, like we talk about super efficiency and effectiveness, but what is efficiency, first of all?
So in my definition of efficiency, it's basically minimizing the amount of redundancies that exist in our life. So for example, if I check a text, I'll answer right away as a general rule. Whereas if I don't answer right away, it's inefficient to check it once and then have to check again in 5 hours or whenever. That whole, the whole process of having to check again is a redundant thing that didn't need to happen by being efficient. And it's the same with switching tasks often, or not having a clear definition of tasks, or not having clear priorities. We go back and forth between things. If we open our emails 10 times a day, that's not necessarily efficient. So really, efficiency is about finding the sweet spot, per se, of where do you want to be in terms of the different trade-offs that exist. And we'll talk about what I mean with this idea of trade-offs. But the concept is, you can't party all night and have a good night's sleep in the same time. You know, with a fixed amount of time and energy, you can only deploy that against one particular thing or a mix of things. But if it's a mix of things, then it's not going to be as much in each of the things than going all in one specific thing, if that makes sense. So it's about navigating all these trade-offs to find your sweet spot of the most efficient way you can be.
Yeah, I like that. So it's kind of like not wasting energy by doing something twice, or expecting too much of yourself by maybe not sleeping enough or partying the next day or doing all those things. And it's kind of where the effectiveness comes in with the efficiency here, because you're being as effective as possible. You're realizing, I am capable of this today, I am not capable of this today, or I am reading my email 3 times today, it can wait till tomorrow, for example. Things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so when we talk about efficiency as such, so what are some key principles of super efficiency, and how do they differ from more traditional productivity techniques?
Yeah, so you have to value wanting to be efficient for you to really dial in this skill. It's a little bit of a radical kind of an optimization skill. But in general, there's definitely a lot of overlap between the traditional and what we'll call super efficiency. But super efficiency is a bit more extreme. And I'll start with the bits that overlap first, because I think they're so fundamental. Some of the fundamentals that I think need to be in place in order to value super efficiency is having an unshakable belief in yourself and in what you're doing, in your plan, and in, let's call it, quote unquote, your purpose. So this idea of being of service and helping the world with something, it removes doing things just for yourself. And because you fulfill both yourself and the world, or being in service to others through a strong purpose, it motivates that drive for increased efficiency.
Interesting. So ultimately, if we're having doubts or fears around our purpose or abilities to do something, that's going to affect us even if we've put a lot of planning into it, for example.
100%. Things like having a strong enough purpose, and what that means, strong enough, varies from one individual to another. In my experience, there's usually a threshold below which life doesn't feel purposeful, but beyond which you have a strong enough purpose that it's like, I want to, whatever I do for the rest of my life, it has to be aligned with this. So that's kind of the inflection point that I'm talking about when we say a strong enough purpose. And in my experience, when you get to a point, that inflection point where your purpose is strong enough that you have that knowing within you that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, then unshakable belief and motivation can come a lot more easily after that point.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Now, there's been an interesting comment actually. Somebody put, how do you suggest one hone in on a strong sense of meaning and purpose? Now, I know it's a bit off topic for what we're here to talk about, but
no, I mean, purpose is a huge part of flow. And actually it fits in very much with my own purpose journey, bringing festivals in with the flow coaching. But there's basically, I have a framework, and Stephen Kotler has a framework. Stephen Kotler is a co-founder of the Flow Research Collective, which is the institute on which I did the flow training with. My framework is, there's essentially a pyramid that you could follow, a pyramid model similar to Maslow, where on the bottom is exploration and on the top is deepening. And basically, as you are searching for the thing in which you want to have that strongest purpose, if it's unclear, then you need to do a lot of exploration. And just to kind of bring it, to kind of relate it back to something we'd all experienced when we are a teenager or still in our high school or university years, we're trying a lot of different subjects, but we don't know which one we want to go necessarily super deep into. Whereas the more you try different things, the more you'll narrow down the area in which you'll want to go deeper. And by doing that, and just keep on doing that, you'll get to a point where you'll find something that's, this is it. This is what feels right for me. And to relate that to Stephen Kotler's model, it's basically curiosity feeds into passion, which feeds into purpose. And it's a very similar model as essentially what I've explained, but you're first motivated by your curiosity, and you can be curious about many things, but curiosity is not enough fuel to become a passion. Passion starts to develop once you have multiple curiosities that intersect each other. And once you have that, then you have a passion. And from passion to purpose, you add the element of selflessness. You add the element of, I'm doing my passion in service to something that's outside of me. And that's essentially the Stephen Kotler model for going from, I have no idea what I'm doing, to finding your purpose. And it's based on a lot of neurobiology and pattern recognition and flow, which are all really correlated, and there's good evolutionary evidence behind it. So if you want to check that out, it's called The Passion Recipe.
Love that. Yeah, really awesome. And so it's when something you're passionate about becomes a selfless venture that purpose really comes into it. So really, yeah, I could feel that. That's really good. And so
that's the 2-minute version.
that was good. Yeah, I really love off the cuff questions. So thank you for the question. As you can see, if you've got any questions and you're listening or watching, we're happy to answer them. So can you give any examples of how you've applied super efficiency on a project or a task and what the results were?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much an optimizer myself. I want things to be optimal. Yeah, one ridiculous example, but it's the one that jumps to mind right now. The order in which I put dishes and cutlery in a dishwasher. Now that seems kind of like, how does this relate to flow and blah, 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 blah. It relates that I don't want to move the cutlery once I've placed it. So something so silly as knives are straight and spoons and forks have a curve. And if you place a spoon and then a knife and then a spoon and then a knife and then a spoon and then a knife, it's going to take a big amount of area. Whereas if you place knife, 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 all the straight lines in parallel, and then you place the spoons, then you've optimized the placement of cutlery for space, which means that when you get a situation when the dishwasher is almost going to be full and needing the maximum amount of space, you don't have to reposition the spoons and the knives. It's kind of silly, but it's a pertinent example in my day-to-day life at the moment, and just kind of one of my OCD things. I mean, we can say it's OCD, or we could say it's I'm just optimizing, but that's one example.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example, actually. I mean, funnily enough, my first job when I was 15 was a dishwasher in a kitchen because I was training to be a chef. And I became incredibly efficient at doing the washing up, and not just for the reason you said, to save space, even though it's very important in a dishwasher. It's the fact you can get all the knives out in one go, and you can dry them and put them in the same place. You can get all the forks out, and so adding to the efficiency.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes people are unaware of how these small things make such a big difference. I've mentioned a few times, like on previous shows, about how I studied as in did a lot of reading on how to become a really efficient entrepreneur. And if you're not an entrepreneur, this works in your real life as well. And one of the things is reduce decisions during the day. And I've actually taken that to extremes. Like yesterday, I'm back on track. I cooked 4 dinners last night. So yesterday I cooked 4 dinners instead of 1. Okay, it takes me an extra hour on Sunday to cook 4 dinners compared to cooking 1 dinner. But now I don't have to do anything till Thursday. So I'm like, and it's made me incredibly efficient and means that my week is very, very peaceful.
Exactly. And that's, in terms of flow, in terms of peak performance, we're really looking for these opportunities where we can deploy batching, which is, as you said, multiple meals cooked or large quantities of a meal cooked, grabbing all the knives and all the forks at once. So that's examples of batching. The other thing that we're looking for in terms of super efficiency is multi-tools. So what a multi-tool is something that's like at least a 2-in-1 or a 3-in-1 or a 4-in-1. In terms of recovery, for example, let's say I'm spending a few hours working on my computer, and then I need a recovery break. I'm going to give myself 10-15 minutes. In that 10-15 minutes, I can either choose to go for a walk, or I can do multiple different recoveries. I would, for example, stack different recoveries. Instead of going for a walk, which is great, nothing against that, you can meditate with some music, smell an essential oil, have your eyes closed, and do some breath work in parallel. So instead of getting like the 1 or 2 different aspects of recovery that you'd get from a walk, which is moving away from the computer, going outside, getting fresh air, which is great, you can do the meditation, the breath work, the sound, and the essential oil smelling. And that gives you all of these sensory experiences that happen within the same amount of time, but you get a feeling of greater recovery than just going for a walk. So that's one of those things, like multi-tools. We're always trying to find what can we do that's at least a 2 or a 3-in-1 without sacrificing any of the components.
Nice. Yeah, no, I mean, I've been trying some of these things. So I was a bit more of I work quite long days. I work hard. I like to try and get as much out of myself as possible. And yeah, I would take normal breaks, go for a walk, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, have a chat with somebody. But since we worked together briefly, I have started introducing different sensory experiences into my breaks. And it has made a very big difference to how quickly I can recover and things like that. So Somebody's asked, can you elaborate a bit more about multiple or many curiosities intersecting with each other?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know why, but I always tend to default to this example. Um, let's say you're someone that likes food, and you're someone that likes traveling, and you're someone that likes the idea of freedom and entrepreneurship. Now, you might have curiosities about how different foods are used throughout the world. You might have curiosities about the intersections between food and health, the intersections between, cooking times and efficiency. What can easily be batched or what can easily be scaled in terms of cooking. And then you have curiosities to travel the world and experience different cultures. And you have curiosities about, wanting to be free on your own time. Now, if all of these are curiosities that are relevant to you, if you think of the intersection of all those things, then the ideal thing for that person would be to have a food truck and travel the world running a food truck business. So that's kind of the idea with, you start with making a list of things that you're curious about, and there's all these instructions in Stephen Kotler's method. There's a Medium article about it. But you make a list about these things that make you curious. You hunt for the intersections of these curiosities, and then you'll start to uncover areas that will add a little bit more fuel to your fire and increase your motivation and perhaps develop into passions. But you also need to go out there and try these different things. It's not a case of sitting at a computer and writing a list and then boom, you're going to find your passion. You also need to go out into the world, try these things and play in that territory that you're curious and wanting to explore your passions about. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that answered your question. That was really cool. I think you could have described me there. I never thought about having a food truck before, but yeah, definitely there's some things that I want in my life. I do want to travel a bit more, and I would like to do things on my own time for sure. So, like, while we're still talking about effectiveness, efficiency, how would you measure effectiveness or efficiency? What would you track, or what would you use to track your progress?
Yeah, so there's a few things. Some that you could literally use as KPIs and some that are more subjective. I'll start with the subjective one that I would say is whenever there's something that's frustrating because it seems redundant or inefficient, that is a data point, albeit a subjective one, but it's a data point that you can use to understand yourself better and think, I was a little frustrated because that happened and that was not as efficient as I'd have wanted. Or, I could have been more efficient in doing this or that. Noted for the next time. And moving away from the subjective territory and into the more objective territory, one thing that I think is crucial is a goal and goal review protocol scheduled into the diary. So having a constant feedback loop between what am I trying to achieve and how has the past week, how has the past month, how has the past few days been building up to that, and a recurring review process. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. You could do it quarterly. You can figure out your own frequency, but the tighter the feedback loop, the more progress and fuel you'll get from reviewing your goals. So having that goals mapped out on both the long and medium as well as short term, and short term is more like daily and weekly goals, whereas long-term goals is more like where do I want to be in a year or 5 years or in 6 months. Those all need to be reviewed at different frequencies in order to be able to make course corrections on your actions depending on how fast or slowly you are or are not meeting your goals. And then there's one last one that I would use as well, in terms of a KPI, and that is the accuracy of the tasks that you're doing. If you want to write a book, the most accurate task is writing words on a page. If you want to make money as an entrepreneur, the most accurate task is optimizing for sales calls. There are other tasks that are less accurate towards those goals, and I'll give quick examples. For example, if you're an entrepreneur looking to optimize for making money, working on your branding might not be directly as relevant or as accurate, be the highest accuracy for that goal. And it has certainly more accuracy than a task that's completely unrelated to the goal. For example, playing video games. And similar with writing a book, the most accurate task is how much you write. Something that's not as accurate would be reading what else is out there. And something that's not on track at all, again, video games, for example. So this degree of how accurate your task is times how much you're in flow for those tasks is going to create massive leaps of progress and really hyper efficiency.
Nice. And just for anybody watching who doesn't know what a KPI is, it's a key performance indicator. So it's something that will tell you whether you're on track or off track, and it's something that you can relate to. So I like that. So it's to do with the accuracy of the task. Yeah. And also having clarity of actually, you know, where you're trying to get to and the steps.
What is the goal?
Yeah. So what's the goal and what are the steps you need to get there? Is the only way you can really measure if you're progressing towards something effectively or efficiently. And from my experience, being highly effective and efficient is challenging to know whether you're doing well unless you've done it before. How does that make sense? Is that something that would make sense? Because you can't really tell if you're doing well if you haven't done it before. You've got nothing, no benchmark, you've got nothing to compare it with, maybe somebody else. But what would you say?
I would say absolutely. I think in general, in any skill acquisition journey, there's a little bit of benchmarking and a little bit of history to understand, like, why is this thing is important, and why is this thing important to me, and why is it that I want to optimize or focus on this right now. And I think that gives us a kind of minimum place to be at where we can say, you know, of all the things that I could be doing, I want to focus on this. And I don't think it's necessarily important to compare yourself with others as much as it is to compare yourself with yourself. I'd much rather know, am I doing better than I was last month or a year ago? That's good enough for me.
Yeah. Awesome. And Shares asked, wouldn't we need to schedule time to measure our progress?
That is, yeah, that is one of the sort of trade-offs, we'll say. It's like the more things you're monitoring, the more time you'll spend monitoring them. So this is one of those things, like, you can't sleep and party. You have to find a sweet spot that works for you. in terms of what's important to track and how often should I track it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I used to think I was somebody that could party and work all the time, and then I paid the price eventually. So Norm has also said, task
Me
for
too.
yourself, or yes, I think we've got a lot in common, me and Anthony here. We'll probably get more things out as we go along. So Norm has asked, task for yourself or for an employee would have a different focus, maybe. So if you're, so if you're trying to, okay, have you ever run a team? Yeah, it's very hard when you run a team and you set tasks for someone else not to expect them to live up to your expectations. So I'd say it is different when you set tasks for a team for someone else, because you have to ensure they have everything they need to complete that task and to make it happen. So, I mean, we talked about efficiency and effectiveness. Now, ultimately, the sweet spot of efficiency and effectiveness is flow. Is that right?
It's one of them, because as with I want to put out there the idea that yes, it's great to maximize flow, but also we cannot be in flow all day. That's as Stephen Kotler would say, that's schizophrenia. So what I want to say is flow is a hyper efficient state, but it takes some natural motivations or skill acquisition to be able to get into flow consistently. The other side of the flow coin, and this is when we talk about the flow cycle, there's a cycle to flow, and it goes struggle, release, flow, recovery. Basically, we can say that the struggle and flow pieces of the coin are almost like inverses of each other, where one is just a natural, effortless ease, but the other is still very productive, but it's more of a concentrated skill acquisition side. And then the other two are more recovery and taking your mind off of those activities that you might be in struggle or flow. And what phase of the flow cycle you're in, and we go in and out of all different phases in different ways. It's a bit of a basic model that is trying to explain something so complex that it's not perfect. But the gist of it is your brain is in different wave frequencies in each of these different phases. So flow, there is a downside to flow, and you can be in flow and not efficient. That's ultimately what I wanted to circle back to that point. Flow is a great state to be in when you're able to deploy flow against goals and tasks that are relevant for your life, that are going to help you live your best life or just make you happier. I could say I want all of my work to be directed into this coaching business, but then I can get into flow by skiing or snowboarding, and I could do too much of that, and too much flow in skiing or snowboarding might take away at the time that I want to use to build the coaching business. Of course, there's a trade-off in that if you value skiing and snowboarding and you want to do it and get into flow because of that, then it will help you feel good. And when you feel good, you'll be able to be productive even not in flow. But my point was, you have both sides to the coin, and it's not necessarily because you can be in flow that you'll deploy the flow against things that you want it to be deployed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, flow doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will be efficient or effective in any way. So there's some people asking as well. So can you define flow? What does it mean for you?
Yeah. Flow is the optimal state of consciousness for a human being and for productivity, creativity, and happiness. Studies have shown that we get multiple fold increases in our focus, productivity, creativity, mood, and skill acquisition when we're in flow. And there's a few characteristics that signify flow, one of which is selflessness. So the ego melts away. You're not thinking, how do I look? Am I doing well? Do people like it? You're just doing the thing. Timelessness is the most common and easy to spot factor. Timelessness is when 3 hours go by and it felt like 1 hour, or the vice versa of when 1 hour goes by and it felt like 3 hours. And then the piece that it led to everyone calling this state flow is effortlessness. Effortlessness. And the fourth characteristic is richness of experience. You're able to take in a lot of sensory information and you're able to process things really quickly and really efficiently. So the four characteristics were selflessness, which is loss of the ego, timelessness, which is that distorted feeling of time, effortlessness, which is what leads to the flowiness feeling, and richness, which is the richness of all the experience and the inputs that you're able to process. So I hope that kind of does a good job at defining it from a couple of angles, a verbal one and a characteristic one and a little bit of a statistical benefits one.
Yeah, I love that. Really, really, I think that was awesome. So selflessness, timelessness, effectiveness, and richness. And we like the nesses around here for sure. And yeah, exactly. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. Personally, I do enjoy what I do and I try to get myself into flow states. So now Norm has asked, so what is your reward for improving your flow? Do you expand or relax?
So flow is a very, it's the rewards in flow, and I think of this in neurochemistry. They're dopamine, noradrenaline, norepinephrine, serotonin, oxytocin, the kind of reward chemicals that are the same chemicals of when we have a nice meal, when we accomplish a goal, when we take drugs, even MDMA, LSD, all those things, they drive the same kind of neurochemistry, which is the feel good, accomplish goals, feel satisfied, feel love. Those are the things that show up when you start tapping into flow. In terms of rest and recovery is kind of another side of the coin, in that you need to be skilled at the rest and recovery piece in order to experience more flow. So just tying those two things together, because they're different phases of the flow cycle, and we're constantly going around this cycle depending on the activities we're doing and our current skill level within them, etc.
Yeah, amazing. So ultimately, I'm getting the idea that if you are in flow for too long, you can actually have the opposite and become less efficient the next day and less effective because you maybe burnt off a lot of energy and had a big chemical release.
Yeah, and this is what happens when people are addicted, for example, to either substances, where the substance is actually keeping them in flow, and so they're using all the same neurochemistry, and then they just get a huge crash. Or if you're even non-substance related, addiction to video games and the like, or gambling, and you just use up all of your brain power and energy in that high flow activity, but you've just sapped up your energy and you're not able to do anything for another 1 or 2 days. So yeah, it's what's it called? A sword with two double-edged sword.
Yeah, double-edged sword, that's the one. Yeah, my life's full of those. And so how do you recognize when you're in a flow state? What can you do to actually get yourself into a flow state once you are aware of it?
Yeah, so my short answer is, if you're thinking, am I in flow or am I not in flow? You're not in flow. Most of the time, I'd say 90 to 95% of the time when I'm in flow, I don't know, and I'm not consciously thinking whether or not I am in flow. I usually recognize it once I've come out of it. So I had recently a 3-hour coaching session, like pretty much 3 hours, but it felt like 1 hour, and I didn't look at the time at all. I was in full screen. I was not caring. I had my full calendar was blocked for that time. There was no way for me to recognize that I was in flow whilst I was in flow. And I think that's quite common. The only other times where I have experienced flow and been conscious of it have been really powerful, or experiences that have had a big high and low. For example, a lot of physical activity, and then jumping into an ice bath, and then coming out into a really cool view or something, like a cool environment. And you might get this feeling of like, wow, time has just slowed down, or time is frozen. And you get that conscious thought of, wow, this is flow. But then those flow states are often short-lived in my experience. The longer ones, where you're in flow for between an hour and 3 or 4 hours, those ones you're not conscious that you're in flow when you're in it. You're more, you are conscious of it once you come out of them and are realizing, wow, there was a lot of time that passed by and I had no idea. And the other thing to mention is flow is on a spectrum. Flow is not an on and off. You can be in a micro state of flow, or a medium state of flow, or a deep, deep state of flow. And so that also plays into how much, if at all, you notice it or not.
Nice. Yeah, really nice. Well explained there. And so what does things like meditation or mindfulness play a role in achieving a flow state?
Yeah, so mindfulness and meditation, I mean, like any activity, you can be in flow in any activity. So mindfulness and meditation can be flow activities in and of themselves. But generally, as far as like the big picture view, things like the positive psychology toolkit, meditation, mindfulness, gratitude, affirmations to some extent, all of those things are skills that will turbo boost your mindsets and your recovery, depending on which activity. And those are enhancers to flow. So that's the biggest way that they overlap.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, so that enhances to flow. And yeah, I mean, obviously, like I realize there's a fine line between flow and highly effective, but I find there are ways. Now, one of the things, the tricks you taught me was a little bit of stress sometimes is a good gets you into flow. So if you actually just push past getting yourself into order, doing those things, you can actually get into a flow state. What about things like caffeine and things like that? Can they help, or can they hinder, or
The short answer, I believe, is either or.
okay.
If you're powering on caffeine to get through the day, but as a baseline, you're not feeling your best, then at some point the crash is going to be bigger than no caffeine. But if you're using caffeine just as a simple, like, oh, I just have it in the morning to have more energy, and, you know, I'm able to have a nice, consistent day to day, then it can enhance. We can also talk about the area of flow triggers, because we can cultivate our own flow triggers, in the sense that if I have an activity that I know will always put me into flow, like writing a piece of content, when I know what I want to express and what the kind of theme or subject of that piece of content would be, I could make drinking my coffee a flow trigger by cultivating the habit loop of drinking the coffee and then getting into that flow state activity. And then once the flow trigger is cultivated, then drinking that coffee in the same way can become a trigger to flow for different activities. That's a bit kind of advanced stuff, and it requires this conditioning and a little bit of use of habits, as well as knowing what flow trait, like what activities always put you into flow. But there are things that can be done. But from a purely biological level, from a purely substance level, like the caffeine molecule, neither helps nor hinders in and of itself. It's all based on dependencies.
Oh, so basically we can start to induce a flow state by creating the right sort of triggers to let ourselves know we're about to go into that state. And what about environment? Does environment have anything to do with flow?
Yeah. So in terms of flow, environment is linked to habits, and it's also linked to cognitive clutter, cognitive load. So the more stuff there is in your environment, especially like a messy desk or lots of post-it notes and things that remind you of different things, the more of that there is, the less likely you're going to get into flow, because it's more likely that as you see the cluttered environment, your brain starts thinking about all the neural connections that are related to those other things instead of the task at hand. And if there's one thing that needs to be true in order to get into flow, it's to have focus on the task at hand and not have your attention taken away by all the other things.
Love that. Yeah, awesome. So it seems quite logical, really. So you really just got to stay focused and not be distracted and things. So yeah,
Complete concentration is one of the flow triggers as well, and it's kind of a prerequisite for flow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cher's commented, all for writers, this one anyway, it's the zone. And
it is the zone. Yeah, in the zone.
And funnily enough, Cher, that's actually where I first read about flow. I was reading a writer called Tim Denning on on Medium. I don't know what I was about to say there. Graham was going to come up with another word, not sure what that was. On Medium, and yeah, he actually uses coffee. He has 2 cups of coffee before he starts to write, and then he puts headphones on and has binaural beats and does all these things to induce a flow state. But I think distractions are important things. So I think we've given off some given some really good tips and about flow and explained about what flow is and talked about efficiency and effectiveness. And so we're here to talk about festivals. And so first of all, how does this all relate to festivals for you?
So for me, festivals were an absolutely life-changing experience. Before the point that I've ever been to a festival, I used to get into flow states solving math equations, doing math homeworks, like 30 to 60 problems. I'd put on some house music or some techno beats in the background, and solving the math problems would get me into flow. Now there is a reason I'm leading with this. The music was a key part of it, because then I would, as I became more an adult, I would go to nightclubs and concerts, and I even started DJing myself. And so I had a lot of flow experiences that were related to music, notably in concerts and dance clubs, as well as in DJing for a crowd. And so music has had this big overlap with flow for me. And once I discovered that festivals existed, it basically took the concept of one DJ or one concert, which let's call that a one-dimensional thing, and made it into a two-dimensional thing or three-dimensional thing, in the sense that now there's 10 different DJs playing in 10 different areas, and I can go check them all out. So going to a festival was not only that there was a lot of music flow, but it also led to it led to me discovering a space where I could be myself and have all of my needs met, and I could go in and out of flow and recovery however I wanted to. So there'd be music, there'd be arts, there'd be yoga, there'd be food, whatever there may be, there'd be arts. And just having all of these things together in one place just ends up creating a very high flow environment. Because if you need some rest, you can go get some rest. But if you want to explore some art, you can explore some arts. And if you want to go get drowned in some music, you can go get drowned in some music. So it basically, you have all the elements of the flow cycle at your fingertips in a festival. And you're also generally with a lot of happy, pleasant people who are also all there to have a good time. So yeah, just a very high flow zone.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I love that. Yeah. And so you've basically got all the ingredients for getting into a flow state, recovering from a flow state, doing all those things, plus everything else you might want. So what are some of the key benefits of attending festivals? And how do they differ from other social events, for example?
Yeah, so the key thing, in my opinion, is general events have one focus or one activity. You go to a concert, you just have music. You go to the cinema, you just have a film. You go to the gym, and you just have weights and maybe just sauna, or gym and sauna. But in a festival, you can have all of those things in one space. Like, they might be in different areas, but the point is, instead of planning one day to go to one thing and do this one particular activity, you can have multiple days in a place where you have all the activities, and you can go in and out of any activity as you please. And for me, that's really the key difference, and the key benefits is you can get whatever needs met that you have, whatever you feel like doing, you can get that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's so true. Yeah, how many different things, especially at the different kind of festivals that there are. And I mean, even each festival has a variety of things compared to the other festival as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So how do festivals contribute to community building and social connection?
So it's a similar thing as online spaces, in the sense that if you have an online space like a you know, online coaches and consultants, the title of that space draws in that kind of a crowd. For festivals, it's similar. I mean, there is something about the festival that drew the crowd that it draws, but there's a feeling that because we're all in this festival together, we were all pulled, we all had something about that festival that appealed to us. And there's festivals of all sorts. There's hard rock festivals, there's festivals that are focused more on the yoga and meditation, and are more conscious. Some are more into the partying. Some are more about raising consciousness, or creating better things for the earth, sustainability. There are some festivals that are completely off-grid and pride themselves in being solar powered. And so depending on the festival, they draw different types of crowds. And essentially, by being in the space of a festival, you know that there's a certain degree of like-mindedness about it. And so, yeah, people tend to be really lovely and really open to connection. And that's one of the things that is really important for human beings in general. And one of the things that we're really lacking today with the epidemic of loneliness, is that social connection.
Very true. Yeah. And yeah, so it's a really great point. It's a really big group of like-minded people. When you see past just the music festivals and look at all the other types of festivals. So what's your favorite festival out of interest?
I don't have a favorite one as of yet. Generally, I'm a big fan of Burning Man. And when I say Burning Man, I don't mean the big Burning Man in the US, in Nevada, because I haven't been to that one yet. But there's something that most people don't know, and there's a smaller regional network of Burning Man events that happen throughout the world, and they have the same principles and the same culture as the big Burning Man events, but they're a lot smaller. And yeah, what I love about what makes a burn special as opposed to any other commercial festival is a burn is created by the participants. Meaning you and me, if we wanted to create a burn, or if we wanted to run a workshop at a burn, we could do that. Whereas at a commercial festival, you're paying an entity who's trying to make a profit by putting on some entertainment. At a Burning Man event, you are the entertainment. You are the volunteers. You are the staff. And so there's a whole, it's just a totally different experience than anything else that exists in the world.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I've got to make some time to go to one. You told me about the one here in Portugal, and so I'm going to do my best to get to that this year. And so what I
Wow.
find interesting is, so I love the introduction. It said, so you were working a 9 to 5 engineering job right after graduating from university when your whole world got disrupted the first time you went to a transformational music festival. So what festival was that?
So that one was called Electric Forest. It's in the US, it's in Michigan. It happens around the end of June. But it's essentially, it's a big festival in terms of size. It's somewhere between 20 and 50,000 people. I don't know the numbers today, but lots of tens of thousands of people. And it happens, it mixes camping fields and a forest. So you've got some stages that are in open air in a grassy field, but you've also got a whole bunch of art structures and beautiful lights and other stages inside a forest. And it's just a magical environment. And there's a lot about it that completely changed my perspective. One of the things, I had never done camping before in general. And so my experience at that festival was the first time I went camping in general. So that kind of adds a bias. Like my story is different to someone who has been camping before, but never gone to a festival, and would then have some camping skills to translate into the festival. But one of the things that really marked me was, as a first-time camper, you don't know all the tips and tricks. You're always going to be forgetting an item or two that are going to be really critical, like you need a blanket or something. And I came into these situations where I needed something, and I could just rely on the people who were at the festival to get those needs met. If not the first person I would talk to, the second person I would talk to, or the third, or one of the people that I'd talk to who'd ask a friend of theirs, hey, let's get you a blanket and talk about our stories. And it's just, it mixes all of this social connection and fulfilling needs in a way that I had never seen before, and completely contradicted all of my notions of scarcity and capitalism, and instead replaced them with, there is a human nature which is abundant and loving and caring. And that's really what the transformational piece was about that festival. It was being in that environment where the culture was that of love and abundance and getting your needs met. And it's something I hadn't experienced, and you wouldn't necessarily experience in the day-to-day life. And it's actually for that very reason, I think that there's a huge potential for transformative events like that event to be even a healing modality for certain conditions, let's say anxiety, of trauma, of attachment issues. Not having trust in human beings, I think, can be reversed with a powerful experience like that, that totally contradicts the default understanding. And it's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about transformative events in general.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, the experience you just described is a truly beautiful one. And I love the way you put that into words. And I think I can wholly see how these events can be transformational, because I think, like we talked about the other week in the other show, Conscious Creator Community, trust is the big issue. Trust in others, trust in ourselves, trust that we're going to be safe, you know. And so the reason we're talking about festivals as well is Anthony's a big fan of festivals. I think that's kind of leads me on to sweet spot, really. So what is a sweet spot?
Yeah. So we can define a sweet spot as somewhere along a spectrum of possibilities where it's like your preferred zone to be in. And I'll give a concrete example. Because there's 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week, there's a fixed amount of hours within a week. So theoretically, you could work 0 hours in a week, or you could work the maximum number of hours in a week. And that defines a spectrum of all the possible amounts of hours that you could work within a week. And those are the extremes, 0 and the maximum. But the sweet spot is the amount that works for you and the amount that you prefer within that range. And it could be one single number, or it could be a range as well. But it highly depends on what you're talking about and what you're looking at.
So specifically to do with doing things in the right amount of time. You see, I had a bit of a inkling that the sweet spot was also to do with actually where you are and what you're doing, not just how much time you're spending doing it as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we can look at so many things, like I've just talked about time on a week, basis. We can also talk about things like engineering your life. Like if you split up your life into different things, like how much money you make in business or at work, how much time you spend outdoors or on leisure time or fun time, where do you want to live? What kind of weather do you want to have year on year? You can take all of these aspects and think about them as spectrums of possibility, and you can find your sweet spot within each of them. City size, for example, you can live in a small house isolated in the middle of nowhere, or you could live in one of the biggest cities in the world, London, or you could live in anywhere in between. Somewhere, depending if you're more into the rural life or more into the city life or more into something in the middle, there's a sweet spot that works better for you than the other parts of that spectrum. So finding the sweet spot can be along many different dimensions or variables to consider.
Awesome, thank you. And just before we get more onto the sweet spot, there's a question popped up saying, in your opinion, does flow or can flow sustain healthy emotional wellness?
100%. Yeah. In fact, the person who coined the term flow, or at least laid the foundation of flow science, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, was originally studying happiness and found that the people who experienced the most amount of flow experienced or reported being the happiest. And as a part of being able to experience more flow is emotional regulation, and all the stuff that goes with that. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, thank you. And Maida's put, experiencing camping is experiencing simplicity.
Yeah.
I have to be. I love camping. I used to go camping when I was younger. We used to go out as kids when we were about 14, 15 and stay in the woods. and in our tents and stuff. And so, and I used to love it to bits. Still got to take my daughter, but yeah, definitely is simplicity. It's getting back to nature and realizing how great a life you can have without all these creature comforts. That's what they call them, isn't it? The things around us. And so, I mean, for anyone that's watching, trying to like work out how this all sort of links together, well, we need a lot of variety in our lives. We need to, be doing the things we want to do in our lives. And then we, even if we love work, it's ultimately best not to work your entire life away. You got to live a little. And so that's where the efficiency and effectiveness comes in, getting things done. And then the flow states. So whether you're choosing to use them in your work life or your own life, they're definitely something that creates that element of timelessness, that creates that lost feeling where you're like, wow, life can be magical. And they all lead towards the sweet spot, in my opinion. That sweet spot where you're in the right environment, creating your dreams and doing those things. And the festival side of it is something I do enjoy festivals, so don't get me wrong, but it's something very personal to Anthony. And I wonder, Anthony, would you like to tell us about how you plan to, and sorry to put you on the spot here,
no,
bring your business and connect that with festivals, because I think this is a really interesting concept idea, and people should hear it, because we should all be looking at ways to create from our sweet spot, and we have to create that sweet spot first.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And that's one of the things, I think when you were speaking about sweet spot there, you were looking at it from a zoomed out kind of bird's eye view of sweet spot being the ideal mix of life variables. Whereas I was talking about sweet spot as like where along one variable is the sweet spot. But really both are related in the sense that we can split life in all of these different aspects, and the overall sweet spots would be the mix of every individual variable being at its sweet spot. And the reason that I became so passionate about festivals, well, I guess no, the reason I became an entrepreneur in parts was because I had experienced the festival. I was like, once I had experienced this, I was like, I want to experience more of this. How do I change my life in such a way that I'll be able to experience more of this than just going on holiday in order to enjoy them? And that kind of was an anchor point, a goal of mine, to be able to just experience more festivals. And as the years went by, and as I discovered coaching, and as I discovered the science of flow, I realized, wow, there's a lot of synergies between the background I have as an engineer and what I can do with flow and coaching to bring a lot of value to people. And as I've been in parallel on a journey of exploring different festivals, I've noticed that there are more and more therapists and healers attending festivals. And it's not uncommon to go to a festival which can have several thousand people, and there'll be 4, 5, 6, 7 different music stages. There'll be a few different pieces of art. There'll be a tons of different food, but there will also be specialist areas like a healing garden. And in the healing garden, you'll have a bunch of different healers or therapists offering their services, either for free or for a payment or whatever it may be, depending on the events. And there will also be tons of workshops that these people are running throughout the days. And so it became clear to me, because I didn't see any coaches in those events. And because flow has so much overlap with the world of festivals, it was a no-brainer to me that this is my role to fill. I'm going to be that guy who's going to bring flow into the festival scene and start really spreading that there is a science to flow, and how do we get into flow, and creating flow workshops to have people experience deep flow states whilst at the same time having a mini transformational experience within an hour or two. And so that's how all those pieces are tying together. And that's the direction in which my future path is going.
I like it. Yeah, and I mean, personally, I find that an incredibly inspirational idea. And it kind of takes the realms of becoming a coach to all new levels, because suddenly you're mobile, you're out there. And I think specifically with flow, I mean, I think like even the words efficiency, effectiveness, and these kind of people kind of go, you know, because they don't understand. Like,
and
you know,
here's where I'll bring something really special and unique. And this is, I haven't validated this yet, but where I want to go with flow, because the neurochemistry of flow is the same as a lot of the drugs that people are addicted to, or also the same as the highs that people chase, whether it's because of escapism, drinking or drugs, or even things like the neurochemistry is something that can replace those substances and those escapism highs. And so one of the things that I really want to bring eventually is using flow as a replacement for some of the things that people escape into. And the neurochemistry is there. And I know from my own journey that I've validated it on myself, because I used to be, the first few times I went to festivals, it was all about the partying. It was all about substances and experiencing something crazy. Now I don't do that anymore, because I have found a strong purpose. I'm able to tap into flow. I don't need any more of that stuff. And I know that I can bring the same in other people as well. So that's one of the directions that I'm going, which is where I'm getting a lot of fuel for meaning and purpose, from being able to solve problems that are a lot bigger problems than I want to be more efficient. Efficient was the last couple of years, and I'm kind of still on that transition of moving from efficiency to what is that bigger problem that I want to solve. But I'm confident that flow and the neurochemistry behind flow is one of those solutions that is natural and effective.
Nice. Yeah, so I really like that. So basically the excuse me. So basically it's in a way you can swap flow for the need to chase highs. Yeah, for the need to fulfill yourself with what's the right word? Self-medicating is the right word. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think with the right combination of healing, purpose, and flow, you can move away from any toxic substance or escapism, or even any unwanted behavior, potentially.
Nice. Yeah, really important, because I think that's one of the things for me, like you, when I started going to festivals, they were really about having a incredibly crazy experience. It would be the best way to put it, what everyone was going for. And actually what would come out of them would be a crazy experience, but a lot of connection as well. And I think that's really one of the crucial things about festivals and communities. And like you say, because we all had something in common, something like-minded. So while we're talking about the sweet spot, and we talked earlier as well about purpose, and I mean, this is one of those big things, is like, really you can't, as from what I'm picking up, is you won't be in flow unless you're actually doing something that you really enjoy or are really passionate about. And obviously that's the same with the sweet spot as well. So how do we identify our unique strengths and talents? And then how would we leverage them?
Yeah, so we have a lot of great data points, no matter where we're at in life, because we can reflect back on everything we've ever done. And if I ask you to pick, your 5 favorite activities or your 5 favorite life experiences, you could easily just make that list of 5 things. So identifying your strengths is really those things that you're great at, the things that arouse excitement and positive emotions within you and energize you. And as I said, you can start listing activities or life experiences, and from the activities or life experiences, you can figure out what are the common denominators between them, or you can identify what is it about that particular activity that I enjoyed. And then you can find the common bits, and those are most likely your strengths. There's another prompt that I use in my coaching, and if you want to kind of identify your strengths, if money were no objects, or you had an infinite amount of money, what would you be spending your days doing? Those are most likely some of the things that are strengths or high flow activities for you. The $1 million question.
The $1 million question. I like it. Yeah, it's one I've reflected on a few times, and I've made some really good notes there. I've really enjoyed today, and I hope everybody else has as well. And so I'm going to pretty much end. So if you've got any questions, please drop them in the things there. So one question I'd like to ask you is, how do you stay motivated and inspired when working on long-term creative projects, like your business, for example?
For me, it's all about my dream line. Dreamline is basically a timeline, but it's not based on time. It's based on dreams. And so I have the intrinsic motivation that comes from my purpose and the creativity that I want to deploy in bringing my coaching to festivals, and then eventually creating my own events like retreats and festivals. And that's all the intrinsic motivation that keeps me going. But then the extrinsic motivation that keeps me going is, what life experiences do I want to have? I want to go visit this place and that place. I want to do a Southeast Asia tour. I want to go to this festival and that festival. I want to go to Burning Man, but I don't just want to go. I also want to build it. And those things, there's such a long list of these experiences that I want to have, that it's just about looking at my calendar and trying to figure out, okay, when am I going to fit that one in? When am I going to fit that one in? What are the priorities, etc. So it's a mix of those two. The looking forward to kind of treat life experiences, and the creativity bit is all about fulfilling my purpose, basically.
I like that a lot, actually. I think there's something I maybe haven't done enough of myself, is reflecting on, like, what you could call big milestones or achievements that you want to have, where you're actually going to have that, do the thing that you want to do with your business that's slightly unique to everyone else's. And actually, like, yeah, I've got all my goals and milestones, but I don't think I'm reflecting enough or picturing myself achieving a great and amazing things. Ah, that's awesome.
Oh
So,
yeah, it adds fuel to the fire, that's for sure.
and so tell me, we're going to wrap up soon. So what are you up to at the moment? What are you up to this year? What are your plans? Are you taking on clients at the moment or doing any of those things, or?
Really, in terms, so I have 2 months between now and the summer where I'm kind of doing the day-by-day thing of the coaching business, selling the course on Flow that I've just released, working with clients, marketing, etc. And at the end of those 2 months, I'm gonna do a full-on festival tour within the UK. So between the 15th of May and the 15th of September, I'm going to be living in a tent, going from one event to the next, doing a mix of volunteering, paid work, space holding at festivals, and just all around going deep into the festival circuit worlds. In doing that, I'm not going to pause my coaching, but I'm not going to be taking any more clients once that summer kicks off. And in between now and then, it's kind of on a case-by-case basis, depending on who I've worked with before or where we're at, or maybe if someone, wants a little bit of like a 1 or 2 month package, but that's really it. The summer, I'll still be maintaining my marketing, or at least just being present online and giving people value. Still managing the Flow course and still working with the clients that I am working with currently. And that brings me all the way till mid-September. And my plan from mid-September onwards is partly depending on what happens during the summer. But a loose plan that I kind of want to go towards is doing the whole coaching thing, but going to Spain or Portugal, or at least somewhere sunny for the winter, sunnier and warmer for next winter.
Okay.
So yeah, that's one of those experiences I'm looking forward to, like a life experience that I'm, plotting to have is doing that. So it's very motivating.
Yeah, awesome. And I think this is the point, is like when you are able to align your life and business in the way that you are, that is where we get to a sweet spot where everything is working for us, and we know we want to maximize our time, our energy, and we just start to naturally have these flow states that we've been discussing today.
Exactly. Yeah, I think once you've had a taste of what you want your dream life to look like, then it's a lot easier to reverse engineer and have the motivation to solve the puzzle of, okay, now how do I make that happen?
Yeah, and having worked with you, I agree. Yeah, it's much easier to see where you want to get to and then work your way back on all levels. Even if it takes a bit more time, like somebody mentioned earlier, okay, does that mean I need to schedule time in for reviewing? Well, for journaling or something like that. Yeah, I mean, actually, I was very much in that mindset before. Oh, I haven't got enough time for that. I haven't got enough time for that. And since I've started reviewing and planning, I have a lot more time. So it's definitely contradictory. And since I've been learning to get into flow states at work, because I really enjoy what I do, and working with all the different people and working with technology, I actually enjoy those things. Yeah, it's been life-changing for me, for sure. And so, Anthony, I want to say thank you for your time today and for this amazing interview.
Thank you for hosting, Matt.
Always a pleasure. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today and all of your amazing questions and comments. It's been an awesome show. Look forward to seeing you next week. And we'll be back on Thursday as well with the Conscious Creators community in the Conscious Creators community group. So if you haven't joined the group yet, search Conscious Creators Group community group and you will find it on Facebook. Thanks a lot, everybody.